Unacceptable Solutions, the truth about the combustible cladding crisis in Australia and what it means for property owners. Written and presented by Michael Tees.
In the parallel universe of acceptable standards for building products and construction, the regulators talk about pathways to compliance and alternative solutions. In simple terms, this means that there is more than one way to get a building product approved. Before we proceed down any pathways, let's start with the basic goal of the Building Code of Australia. The BCA is designed to achieve and maintain acceptable standards of structural sufficiency, health and amenity for the community now and in the future, including safety from fire. This is a lofty goal indeed, but there's a catch, there always is. The second goal of the BCA is to go no further than is necessary in the public interest. And this is why the BCA sets minimum standards of compliance, which is at the core of the cladding crisis. With that as the stated goal, let's proceed down the BCA pathway to compliance for combustible cladding. There are 5 steps. The first step, things that form part of a wall must be non-combustible. Step 2, non-combustible means it passes a test called AS 1530.1, where a sample of the wall is put into a furnace to see how fast it burns. Step 3. If you can't pass the furnace test because your wall sample burns too quickly, you can use a product that does burn, but doesn't burn that quickly, and it must be on the deemed to satisfy list. Step 4. A type of product called bonded laminate is on the deemed to satisfy list, and it is one where each laminate is non-combustible, each adhesive layer is not more than 1 millimetre thick, and the spread of fire and smoke tests are passed. So far, so good. But step 5 is where things get weird. In step 5, the manufacturers of ACP would have it that the laminate that step 4 talks about is actually the pieces of aluminium that sandwich the polyethylene and not the polyethylene itself. So they say you pull it apart and you test the aluminium only, and not the stuff in the middle that burns like petrol. And not surprisingly, when you do that, the aluminium bits itself passes the test. So we're all good, they would say. Well, this argument apparently appeased the property professionals for nearly 30 years. It took the judge in the Lacrosse case just 6 words to dismiss it, when he said, after carefully considering the whole structure of the BCA, that the argument put by the defendants in getting to step 5 defies both logic and common sense. The intergovernmental boards responsible for the Australian testing standards, the Australian Building Codes Board, did not come off unscathed either. The judge cited evidence of at least 3 instances where the board had information before it that ACP should not be tested using a furnace. A report to the ABCB in 2000 warned that the furnace testing method wasn't appropriate for ACP and should be replaced with a full as-constructed wall test that was then being used in Canada. That was 14 years before the Lacrosse fire. There is a minute of the ABC board meeting in Canberra in October 2010 where it notes that the very ACP product involved in both Grenfell and Lacrosse does not comply with the BCA deemed to satisfy standards. That was 4 years before the Lacrosse fire. And finally, in late 2010, there was a report put to the board that rejected the notion, that is inexplicably still law today, that ACP with no more than 30% combustible material is acceptable. On any view, the BCA goals have not been met, and the arguments mounted to suggest otherwise don't pass the logic and common sense test that our courts have upheld on our behalf. They have not kept the community safe now and in the future. Like landmines buried in the sand, the community still doesn't know where these panels are or how many of them are there. And also like landmines, they might sit undetected and undetonated forever, but then again they may not.
Fix My Strata is brought to you by Alspec, Australia's leading aluminium systems specialists. The information featured in this video is general in nature and does not constitute legal, insurance or financial advice. The information should not be relied upon as advice to be applied in any factual situation. Before making any legal, insurance or financial decisions, you should consult a licensed professional in your state or territory who can advise you whether or not your decision is appropriate for you. Michael Tees has commercial arrangements with Alspec and other companies and service providers mentioned and featured on fixmystrata.com.au.